Have you ever thought of moving to a new country, changing jobs, or just starting fresh? Maybe you're in the process of doing that right now. Big life decisions like these often come with a rush of emotions: excitement, fear, uncertainty, hope, everything all at once. And when those emotions are strong, it's even harder to find the right words to talk about what's happening. And that's exactly why we're going to focus on the English vocabulary you need to talk about these decisions clearly, along with the fears, the reasons, and the goals you have behind them. I want you to have better conversations in English about the topics that matter to you most. So, whether you're thinking about that move, a career change, or simply starting over, this lesson will give you the words and expressions to talk about those changes with confidence and clarity. Together, we'll go step by step through the vocabulary you need, and I'll help you connect each phrase to real life so that you're ready for your next conversation. So, to begin, let's talk about what it means to start anew. Maybe you've gone through something difficult: a breakup, a job loss, or burnout. Maybe you're not running away from anything, but you're ready for something different: a new goal, a new lifestyle, a new phase of life. Whatever your reason, starting fresh takes courage and often a big decision. So, in this section, I want to share 10 essential phrases that help you describe that kind of change clearly. Whether you're rebuilding, reinventing, or turning the page, you'll have the language you need to talk about what you're going through and what's next. So, let's start with this one: to make a fresh start. You'll hear this when someone wants a completely new beginning, especially after something difficult. For example, I'm struggling to find a job in my field, so I'm thinking of making a fresh start, maybe going back to school and getting a new degree. In that example, you can hear the hope for or the possibility of something better. Now, here's another phrase that's very similar: to start with a clean slate. This means starting over without being judged by past mistakes or problems. For example, after the divorce, I moved to a new city to start with a clean slate. There's no history, no judgment, just a fresh beginning. We also say to wipe the slate clean. This means you're choosing to let go of the past and move forward. Like this: we had some challenges early in our relationship, but we've decided to wipe the slate clean and move forward. Do you notice a pattern with these first three examples? They all carry this idea of release, of not letting the past control your next step. Now, let's move on and look at a few phrases that focus more on transformation or becoming someone new or making big changes in your life. The first one is to turn over a new leaf. This is often used when someone changes their behavior or their mindset in some positive way. For example, after the health scare, my sister turned over a new leaf and started eating better. Next is to start a new chapter. We use this when a new phase of life begins. Something big is ending and something new is beginning. For example, graduating from university felt like a new chapter filled with so many possibilities. And here's one that is especially useful after a major life disruption: to rebuild one's life. You might say, after losing her job and moving back in with her parents, she focused on rebuilding her life. This tells the listener, I'm not giving up, I'm just starting over. And now here's a slightly different expression: to reinvent oneself. This is when someone makes a big, intentional change in their career, lifestyle, or even personality. For example, at the age of 50, she reinvented herself as an interior designer and blogger. Now, so far, we've looked at phrases that talk about new beginnings, second chances, and personal transformation. But sometimes that change starts from zero, with no connections, no head start. And that's when we use to start from scratch. Here's how it sounds in an example. When my parents immigrated to Australia, they had to start from scratch. In other words, no savings, no job waiting, just building everything from the beginning, step by step. Another expression that often comes with a big change is to take the plunge. This means doing something risky or scary, something you've thought about for a long time, and you're finally going for it. For example, after years of dreaming about it, I'm finally taking the plunge and opening my own restaurant. And then finally, in this section, is to embrace change. This one is about mindset. It means welcoming the unknown instead of resisting it. For example, instead of fearing the company restructuring, she decided to embrace change and see it as an opportunity. I want to pause here for just a moment before we move on. Have you ever made a fresh start or turned over a new leaf? Try using one of those expressions in a sentence to talk about that moment or that decision. If you want, you can always write it down and share it with me in the comments as well. Now, next up, we'll look at what happens when that fresh start means you pack your things, say goodbye to familiar places, and step into something totally new. A move to a new city, or maybe even a new country. Let's take a look at the vocabulary you need to talk about moving. Now, of course, with moving, there's a mix of logistics and emotions. So you might be feeling everything from excitement to fear and dealing with paperwork and possibly culture shock. So, in this next section, you'll learn the vocabulary to talk about all of it, including how to explain what it really feels like to make a big move and how you've handled it. We'll start with this one: emotional roller coaster. You've probably felt this before. One minute you're excited and the next you're overwhelmed. We use this phrase when emotions go up and down quickly and intensely. For example, deciding whether or not to accept the job offer and move across the country has been an emotional roller coaster. With this expression, you can hear the highs and lows that someone feels. Now, let's talk about how it feels when everything familiar disappears. Here's a strong word for that: uprooted. If you feel uprooted, it means you've been pulled away from your home or your community and you haven't found your new place yet. For example, I think if I relocate, I'd feel completely uprooted and out of place. That word really captures the discomfort of losing your foundation. And if you've ever lived far from home, you also know this one: homesick. This is the sadness that shows up when you miss the people and places that you've left behind. For example, I know that if I stay there for more than a year, I'll feel homesick. Now, let's say that you've made the big move. You're in a new place. What happens next? It takes time to feel comfortable, and that's when we say to ease into. This means to slowly adjust one step at a time. For example, my plan is to ease into the local culture by joining community events. In other words, you don't rush. You just go one step at a time. And of course, we've got these two basic but useful phrases for the move you make. Number one, to move out, to leave your current home. For example, we need to move out by the end of October. And then the second one is to move into, to start living in your new place. For example, we plan to move into the unit on the third floor. Now, let's talk about something more practical: the cost of living. Here's a useful phrase to use for that: to account for. That means to plan for or include something when making a decision. For example, I need to account for non-moving costs like visa fees and utility deposits. And of course, that brings us to this: financial strain. Moving is exciting, but it can also stretch your budget. For example, moving to another country to pursue my PhD will put a financial strain on my family. This is a powerful way to describe money-related stress. And now let's talk about decision making. Once you've looked at all the options and made a final choice, we say to settle on. For example, after visiting 5 different neighborhoods, we finally settled on the quiet one near the park. And then what happens when you start to feel like the new place could be home, like you're no longer uprooted? That's where this phrase comes in, to put down roots. It means that you're not just staying for now, you're building a life. For example, after years of moving for work, I'm ready to put down roots somewhere and build a life. And then once you arrive in your new location, you'll hear these two phrases often. Number one, to settle into, which means to adjust and feel comfortable. For example, it may take me a little while to settle into my new home. And then the second one is to find one's feet, to start feeling confident in a new place or situation. For example, starting over in a new country will be challenging. I just hope I find my feet quickly. Now, before we move on to the next section, let's take another opportunity to practice. I'm curious, have you ever felt uprooted after a move? Or maybe you needed time to ease into a new routine. Think back to a time when you changed locations and try using two or three of those expressions to describe how it felt. Don't forget to also say them out loud so you feel comfortable with how they sound. Okay, coming up next, sometimes the biggest change isn't where you live, it's what you do. Maybe right now you're thinking about switching careers, or you've reached a point where your job no longer feels right. Maybe you're not sure what's next, but you know it's time for something different. So let's look at the vocabulary you need to talk about big career changes and the risks, the fears, and the possibilities that come with them. We'll start with this one, to be at a crossroads. This is a powerful way to say that you're facing a big decision. There are two or more paths that you could take, and you have to make a choice. So you might say, I'm at a crossroads in my career. Should I stay in marketing or switch to finance? This is a phrase that says, this moment matters, and I have to make a choice. Now, when you're preparing for that decision, and you're gathering information, here's a useful one, to do the legwork. This means doing the research, the preparation, the behind the scenes work before you make the move or change. For example, before accepting the job offer in Tokyo, I need to do the legwork, including researching neighborhoods, schools for the kids, and the cost of living. Every big move needs legwork. But even with all the research, there's always some uncertainty. And that's when we say to take a leap of faith. This is when you don't have a guarantee, but you believe it's the right thing to do. For example, leaving my stable corporate job to start my own business is definitely a leap of faith. Now, let's say you're not starting over completely, but you're exploring something new. In that case, you might say to branch out. That means expanding into a new area. It's something related, but also different. For example, after 5 years of working in sales, I'm ready to branch out into consulting. And if this new direction is deeply personal or meaningful to you, then you're probably doing this, to pursue a passion, to go after something that you truly care about, even if it's uncertain. For example, even though I'm 80, I want to pursue my passion for photography and open a studio. Now, if you're changing industries or breaking into a totally new field, here's a great phrase, to break into. This is often used for competitive careers where getting in is not easy. For example, breaking into the tech industry without a computer science degree required extra networking and self-study. As your role and career shifts, maybe you're being promoted or playing a larger role at work. And when that happens, this phrase is useful, to take on. It means to accept new responsibilities or challenges. For example, I'm excited to take on more leadership responsibilities in my new role. Now, let's say the change isn't just about your tasks or responsibilities. It's about the pace, style, and environment. That's when we say to change gears or to switch gears. It means shifting to something different, usually in the tone or the speed. For example, after working in fast-paced startups, I'm ready to change gears and join a more established company. And finally, I've got two more expressions for you on letting go of an old role. The first is to make a clean break. That means leaving completely, no slow transition, no overlap. So, in an example, it might sound like instead of gradually transitioning, he'll make a clean break from finance and enroll in culinary school. And the second one is to walk away from. This one has a lot of emotion behind it. It's about leaving something behind, often because you know it's the right thing to do, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. For example, it's difficult, but I need to walk away from this toxic work environment for my mental health. So let's take a moment to bring this all into real life. I want you to imagine you're having dinner with your family, explaining your decision to leave your current job and switch to a completely new field. In that conversation, you might say, I know it seems sudden, but I'm really at a crossroads. I can stay comfortable, or I can pursue my passion for environmental science. I'll have to take a leap of faith and probably start at the entry level, but I'm ready to branch out and do something meaningful. I just can't let this opportunity go. I need to switch gears completely. And now think about you. Have you ever felt stuck at a crossroads, not sure which direction to take? If you're considering a change right now, which one of these phrases is most useful to you? Try using one in a sentence about your own life or career. And now let's take a look at something just as important as all the reasons behind a decision: how to talk about the support systems and the people who help you through big changes. Whether you're starting over, moving, or making a big career change, you probably aren't doing it alone. The people around you, the advice you get, the resources you lean on, that's your support system. And having the right words to talk about that support is just as important as describing the decision itself. So let's start with this one: a support system or a support network. This means the people in your life who help you emotionally, practically, or professionally. For example, having a strong support system makes starting over in a new country so much easier. That support system could be family, friends, coworkers, anyone who's in your corner. And that leads to the next phrase: to lean on someone. This means to depend on someone for help, especially during a tough time. For example, during a career transition, it's normal to lean heavily on someone's advice and encouragement. This doesn't mean that you're weak. It means that you're smart enough to ask for help. Now, speaking of help, let's talk about financial or emotional backup. Something that helps you feel safe if things don't go as you planned. That's called a safety net. For example, my savings are thankfully my financial safety net while I search for a new job. You might also have a safety net in the form of a mentor or a backup plan or even a language support group while adjusting to a new country. And now here's a phrase that's helpful when you're unsure about a decision: to bounce ideas off someone. That means sharing your thoughts out loud with someone else, not because they're going to decide for you, but just to help you think more clearly. For example, I want to bounce some career ideas off you before making any big decisions. This is all about talking through your thoughts, doing it out loud with someone you trust. And finally, there's this one: to have someone in your corner. This is personal. It means someone is on your side. They believe in you, they've got your back, no matter what. For example, even when I doubted my decision to change careers, I knew I had my family in my corner. That kind of support changes everything. Now, once again, let's put all of this together in a real life example. Imagine you're on a video call with a close friend talking through a big life transition. In that call, you might say, it's been overwhelming, but I'm lucky to have such a strong support system. I've been leaning on my sister a lot for practical advice. Plus, my savings are acting as a safety net while I get settled. Honestly, it's been so helpful to bounce ideas off you and get your perspective. And now I want you to give it a try. Think about a time when you made a big life decision. Who helped you? What kind of support made it possible to move forward? With that in mind, which of these phrases could help you talk about that experience in a clear, confident way? If you've ever faced a big life change similar to what we've talked about today and felt lost in English conversations trying to find the words to talk about it, this vocabulary gives you a new way to talk about it. Throughout the lesson, I shared some questions with you, encouraging you to use some of the vocabulary. The best next step that you could take right now to remember this vocabulary is to practice using it. Write the sentences down, say them aloud. Even better, use them in real conversations. If you're looking for a great place to do that, to get real speaking practice with guidance and support, that's exactly what we do inside the Confident Women community. Joining us inside the community means you get regular speaking practice, study guides, and expert coaching from me and my team so you build up your English confidence for daily conversations. If you'd love to learn more, you can find all the details at speakconfidentenglish.com/community. I'll also leave a direct link in the notes below. With that, thank you so much for joining me today. And if this lesson helped you, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening or watching from today. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you next time.